Hey, it's Matt, and here's how I got the Platinum Trophy for Final Fantasy 1. If you enjoy this video, let YouTube know by leaving a like, and I'll be sure to turn this into a Final Fantasy Platinum series. Starting off, we get to choose our 4 Warriors of Light. As this is my first time going through Final Fantasy 1, and well aware of the amount of BS in old JRPGs,
A bullshit?
I referenced the guide.
Oh, magic conch shell, what do we need to do?
And according to it, my best warrior options were a monk, a warrior, a white mage, and a black mage.
The shell has spoken!
These characters don't have canon names, but according to what I could find online, these were the names used in some spin-off story. So it'll be up to Fritz, Zest, Flo, and Daewoo to restore their 4 crystals and save the world from an unknown force, in accordance with the prophecy. We're thrown right into the game world, and upon entering the nearest town, we meet with the king, where he recognizes their crystals and us as the fulfillers of the prophecy. He asks us to save his daughter from a rogue knight, Garland. Seems a bit selfish, given that we should be out saving the world and such, but we agree.
It's mine, 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 mine.
I wasn't quite sure what to do after this.
What should I do?
But we head northwest and quickly stumble upon a castle. We enter the castle, now identified as the Chaos Shrine, and immediately we run into Garland and the king's daughter. He explains that he kidnapped her to exchange her life for the king's kingdom, but he keeps his villain monologue short and launches us right into our first boss battle. According to my notes, I, quote, got fucked by the boss, so it was back to the first town for us.
Yep, we are absolutely cooked, chat. GG.
I stocked up in town and spent a little time grinding random encounters in the area, and then we went back to Garland. This time, I was able to take him down and rescue Princess Sarah. We head back to Castle Cornelia, and the king rewards us by rebuilding a bridge just north of town.
So peaceful.
Upon crossing it, we get the opening sequence, which may be the slowest scrolling wall of text I've ever seen, as in it takes almost 2 minutes for the 6 sentences to scroll across our screen. But once that's out of our way, we get our first trophy, and we're off into the world.
Here I go again on my own.
We make our way east and stumble upon a town called Bravoka. In it, the villagers tell us of the pirates that have taken over, so we go over to them and beat the shit out of them.
You are dead!
The captain, learning the errors of his ways, apologizes by giving us his ship, which now allows us to cross the oceans of the game. Daewoo got knocked around a little too hard in the fight, so I revive him.
Were you killed?
Sadly, yes. But I lived.
Stock up, and set up for the high seas. Along the way, we get a trophy for completing 10% of the bestiary entries just before we make landfall. We stumble into a town across the continent called Elfheim, where we find a prince cursed to eternal sleep by the dark elf Astos. The healer alludes to there being some concoction that can rouse one from sleep, which I figured could be bought at a store. I then spent a rather embarrassingly long time running around trying to figure out what the item was. It wasn't all bad though, as I did get a trophy for defeating 100 monsters. I finally found Matoya's cave, complete with animated rooms that remind me of Fantasia, where we meet Matoya. However, her crystal eye has been stolen, and it seems heavily implied that we're the ones that are supposed to find it. These characters need to quit it with trying to act like they're not asking us to solve their problems. At least the king was straight up asking us to rescue his daughter.
This is what you shall do.
Anyway, as I kept wandering the world, I earned a trophy for obtaining 10,000 gil. I enter Mount Dagar, home of the dwarves, and learn that the Astos that cursed the elf prince is likely the one that also stole Matoya's eye. They don't have anything else useful for us now, so after stealing some gil from right in front of them, it's time to track Astos down.
I will look for you. I will find you. And I will kill you.
In the Western Keep, conveniently located west of Elfheim, we find a king who is also tricked by Astos, who now holds his crown at the Marsh Cave. On our way to the cave, we get our first silver trophy by defeating 300 total monsters.
Are you not entertained?
Once in the cave, which is the first true dungeon of the game, we try opening as many chests as possible, as we need to open every chest for a trophy. Speaking of chests, after barely making out alive, we finally recover the king's crown, which we take back to him. It turns out that the king was Astos all along.
In case you haven't noticed, you've fallen right into my trap.
Combining the power of the crown and the power of the crystal eye to become the true elf king. His illusions don't last long, and we take him down and recover the eye. I agree, Flo. Fuck that guy. We return the eye to Matoya and are given a jolt tonic in return. She then calls us ugly to our face.
Well, maybe it's just because you're ugly.
So we leave her in her brooms and track back to the elf prince. As we pull into the harbor, we get a gold trophy for defeating 500 monsters, then proceed to wake up the prince. In exchange, he gives us a mystic key that can unlock all doors in the game and aid us in taking people's stuff from right in front of them. Speaking of that, our next trophy comes when we're stealing weapons from Castle Cornelia after opening 10% of the chests. In one of those chests, we find nitro powder, which we give to the dwarves to aid in their mining. The resulting explosion destroys part of the continent. giving us access to lands outside of the starting continent. Sailing through the newly created canal, we reach the ruined town of Melmond, which has been attacked by a vampire. Here we buy some new weapons, armor, and magic, and are instructed to restore our 4 crystals. This is where the game really gets going.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
In the Cavern of the Earth, we run into the vampire and defeat him in order to obtain the Star Ruby.
I am going to my room now, for I must slumber, per se.
We also coincidentally got a trophy after this battle for obtaining 50,000 gil. We gave the ruby to a giant in the aptly named Giant's Cave, and he moves out of our way. We can now visit the sage, who gives us an earth rod, allowing us to access the depths of the Cavern of Earth. Back in the cavern, we earn our final gil-related trophy for obtaining 100,000 gil.
It's not a liquid!
In the deepest room of the cavern, we meet Lich, the Earth Fiend. After defeating him, we restore the Earth Crystal's light, which earns us a story trophy in the process. 1 crystal down, 3 more to go. Up next is the Fire Crystal, but before that, we head into Crescent Lake on the east side of the map and talk to a sage, unlocking a canoe. We can now navigate rivers, which takes us to Mount Golg.
It's like a sauna in here.
As I got toward the end of the dungeon, low on health, I realized I'd accumulated a ton of gil, so I decided to head back to Crescent Lake and buy 99 of most items.
I'll take your entire stock!
After some more exploring, I found the boss in Mount Golg, but made sure I collected all the chests in the dungeon first. Marilith, the Fire Fiend, goes down easily, and our Fire Crystal is restored. We get a trophy, then leave the dungeon. We stock back up in town, then head to the Cavern of Ice. In the Ice Dungeon, we earn a trophy for completing 50% of the bestiary entries. The cracks in the floor here are a total pain, as we have to fight our way every time we fall down the hole.
Boy, I'm glad all that's over.
Squidward! You're back!
We eventually fall down the correct crack and right onto the Levistone. We defeat an evil eye and take the Levistone before heading back to the surface. There is no ice crystal, so we've got what we came here for. By taking it back to the map, we're able to summon the game's airship, allowing us access to the entire world map. While exploring the map, I went into the Dragon Caves, where I collected enough treasure chests to earn 50% total completion and get a trophy. I also found some friendly dragons and the Dragon King Bahamut. He tells us to return to him with the token of our courage, taking our journey to the Citadel of Trials. Here, our courage is put to the test, with the reward awaiting us upon the completion of the trials. The only really challenging part of this dungeon was figuring out which teleporter to go through. That, and the random insta-kill I experienced as soon as we started. I have no idea what happened. Fritz took 3 damage and was just dead. It wasn't a typical insta-kill attack, so maybe I just got unlucky. Regardless, we complete the trials and grab the Rat's Tail, a strange object to serve as a token of courage, then take it back to Bahamut. He upgrades our 4 heroes' classes, giving us a trophy in the process. Essentially, he just turned us into Giga Chads. Our wizards can now wield the highest level magic, so we buy and equip that. The villagers then inform us that a fairy has gone missing, so we track down a desert villager, and he sells us the bottled fairy in exchange for a good chunk of gil. Taking the fairy back into town, we free her, and she gives us an item that allows us to breathe underwater. The next crystal we need to store is the water crystal, so this works out. We take our canoe straight into a waterfall.
Even in a motorhome does make sense.
Bringing us to the waterfall cavern. Here, we obtain a warp cube, which will help us in a future dungeon.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
Once we're back in town, we talk to a mermaid, who lets us use a submarine after she notices that we can breathe underwater. I hope that the sub isn't controlled by an Xbox controller, but the mermaid gets turned into dust before we can confirm that.
I don't feel so good.
Now in the Shrunken Shrine, we obtain the Rosetta Stone and fight the Kraken. He goes down in less than 2 minutes. It turns out electricity will fuck you up if your power is water-based. With the crystal restored and the waters revitalized, see what I did there?
You clam up!
We head back to the town of Melmond to make use of that Rosetta Stone. A doctor in town deciphers the language and teaches us Lufenian. We then fly to Lufenia, now armed with the power of knowledge.
Knowledge.
Here, someone gives us a chime, which allows us to access the tower chilling in the middle of the desert.
What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
In the Mirage Tower, we take down the Blue Dragon mini-boss in a single turn. I think we're getting too strong, collect all the chests, and then use the warp cube from the waterfall to reach a flying fortress. This was the last unexplored map location, so we earn a trophy for traveling everywhere on the map. Although I was having no trouble with battles, I set the experience multiplier to 4 to help us reach level 50 for a trophy. I didn't know how much longer we had with the game, so I figured it would be better to get that trophy now instead of grinding after completing the game. In one of the rooms of the fortress, we find some adamanite, which will help us craft one of the strongest swords in the game. In the middle of the fortress, we find an observation window, which shows us the gathering place of the forces of fire, earth, water, and wind. It's the Chaos Shrine, where we first defeated Garland.
You're gay? It's fine if you're gay, Butters, I don't care. Huh? No, I'm Professor Chaos.
Further into the fortress, we finally reach level 50 with each party member, giving us that trophy. We battle Tiamat, the Fiend of Wind, and with him out of the way, all 4 of our crystals have been restored. We'll also need to complete the bestiary for a trophy, so I stick around the area, spending 45 minutes trying to get the war mech to spawn. He has roughly a 3% chance of spawning, but we finally meet him and add him to our bestiary. With the flying fortress completed, all that's left is to complete the Chaos Shrine. But first, I have some trophy cleanup to take care of. I gave the Adamite to the blacksmith of the dwarves, and he created Excalibur for me, also earning me a trophy. I spend the next half hour or so trying to find the remaining monsters for the bestiary. Just before the final dungeon, I accessed the hidden 15 puzzle game and got a trophy. Now, all that's left is the Chaos Shrine. By shining the 4 crystals onto the black crystal at the center of the shrine, we travel 2,000 years back in time.
The snack machine took my quarter!
And now have access to the entirety of the shrine. Here, we have to fight each of the 4 fiends again. While everyone can now do hundreds of HP of damage per hit, Fritz is just doing his best. That is, until we open a chest and find the Katana Masamune, and now he becomes the strongest character in the party.
Yep, you're banned. Have a good night.
Speaking of opening chests, we finally open our final chest of the game and earn a trophy for collecting all the game's treasure. With the second iterations of the Fiends destroyed, we spent another 20 minutes hunting down the last remaining monster for the bestiary, an Iron Golem.
In this video, I'll show you how to make an Iron Golem.
Stone Golems appear frequently, but apparently the Iron Golem has a single-digit % chance of spawning.
It ain't me.
But finally, we track 2 down, and once the battle is over, we have completed the bestiary. Now all that's left is the final boss. The final boss for the game is Garland, the knight that was the first boss of the game. He tells us that he had been saved by the 4 fiends, sending him 2,000 years into the past. Once he was here, he sent the fiends into the future, where they will once again send him back into the past, creating an infinite cycle whereby he can live eternally. I don't really know how that works. I'm gonna need a Vsauce video on this time, Paradox.
Hey, Vsauce, Michael here. But now, I'm not.
But before we can watch that video, Garland transforms himself into chaos, and the final showdown is upon us. There were a few close calls, but in the end, the 4 warriors stood tall and were able to overcome chaos, severing the time loop and once again bringing peace. Just before the final credits, we earn a trophy for completing the bestiary and are treated to another slow scrolling wall of text. Here, we learn that the true hero all along was us, and that the crystals reside within our heart. That's some deep shit right there. But once back on the title screen, we earn a trophy for defeating chaos and restoring peace to the world, and with it, the Platinum Trophy for Final Fantasy I. While there was plenty of old school BS, it was still a solid time exploring the world that started one of the most popular and beloved JRPG franchises in history. While I wouldn't recommend this as anyone's first journey into the Final Fantasy series, I think more recent games would be a better starting point. The picks for Remasters are the best way for those interested in experiencing the history of Final Fantasy. Let me know which Final Fantasy is your favorite in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more Final Fantasy Platinum videos like this. And I'll see you in the next video.